Namaste. My salutations to all of you. We have been discussing the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, known as Arjuna Vishada Yoga. As of last week, we covered up to Shloka 9. Usually, the tendency is to look this chapter only as a story, but so far in our analysis, you might have seen this is much more than a story. So it refers this Mahabharata battle. One way of looking at it is as a historical battle that happened in ancient India, which gave an opportunity to present this dynamic, life changing, life transforming message of the Bhagavad Gita. So, a particular problem happened to a typical prototype of a human being, Arjuna, was taken and used as an opportunity to give the life transforming message for the entire humanity. So please note that Krishna was not addressing Arjuna's problem, right? Arjuna's immediate problem was how to face that battle, how to wage battle with his relatives or families. That is Arjuna's problem. And the solution of that problem is only limited to Arjuna. But Krishna was not addressing that particular problem. He was addressing a problem that every human being is subjected to sorrow and suffering. What exactly that is creating suffering and sorrow varies from person to person and even to a person from time to time. What caused sorrow to me when I was a child might be completely different for the cause of sorrow and suffering at a later point of time. So we just need to understand the fact that what Krishna is addressing here in the Bhagavad Gita is a human being is subjected to sorrow as well as the sufferings. And that is the fundamental problem addressed by the Bhagavad Gita. And chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita is an elaboration or a description of that fundamental problem. So we need to reread the Bhagavad Gita with this angle, and we are going to elaborate that as we get into chapter 2. How we are going to address shloka by shloka. This is the way we have to look at the Bhagavad Gita. When you reread the Bhagavad Gita with this idea, all these ideas will automatically get related to you. And for this purpose, we are looking at the battle of the Kurukshetra as a battle within. We don't know what is happening in our mind. In each and every one of us, there are Devic tendencies and Asurika tendencies. And there is a constant battle that is happening in my mind. What needs to be done versus what feels to be done. What I like to do versus what needs to be done according to the rule of dharma. There is always a battle happening. Raga dveshas, the likes and dislikes, try to push me and pull me in certain direction, and my responsibilities, duties, and commitment to dharma pushes and pull me in a different direction. Whoever wins that internal battle, I will act accordingly. For example, I wanted to live a healthy lifestyle. But the likes and dislikes in me constantly pushes and pull me towards a sedentary lifestyle, an unhealthy habit of eating, and indulging in sense pleasures, which may give me temporary, immediate gratification. So, if my individuality gets surrendered or conquered by these adharmic or asuric tendencies, I'm losing my inner battle and Kauravas are winning. The whole idea of the Gita is to point out that fact that there is a constant battle happening in me, and what we need to do, we need to get surrendered to teachings of Krishna and get aligned with that good noble values within me and try to propitiate that value so that their voice heard loud and clear, and as a result I can live a beautiful life. So the first shloka of the Bhagavad Gita is an instruction. Typically, we saw that Dhritarashtra represents the blind mind, and that blind mind is giving a command to an honest introspection. Sanjaya is the one who speaks truth. No matter what, he speaks truth. So he was asked to describe what is happening in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Finally, the blind old king asks that question. So just like that, we need to instruct our blind mind. Our mind is typically blind to what is happening within us. So ask that initiation from that mind is extremely critical for Gita to happen and deploying the teachings of the Gita in me. When I'm not deploying the teachings of the Gita in me and living that life, this teaching won't make any difference in our life. So that is why Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yutsavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kimakaruvoda Sanjaya. That shloka is very important. And when the Sanjaya looked at the battlefield, we saw that King Duryodhana or the Prince Duryodhana went up to Drona and enumerated both Pandavas and Kauravas army. The Pandavas army internally represents the dharmic tendencies in me. We saw that the self-control, ability to the divine calmness, life force control, all those noble values are in me, and also the adharmic values are also in me, right? Duryodhana, Dushasana, all those people are in me. So this was the scene we have seen so far. So we are going to continue our discussion. So let's start with shloka 10 and 11. So we will listen and then we will continue.
अस्माकं तु विशिष्टाये तान् निबोध द्विजोत्तम नायका मम सैन्यस्य संज्ञार्थं तान् ब्रवीमि ते भवान् भीष्मश्च कर्णश्च कृपश्च समितिञ्जयः अश्वत्थामा विकर्णश्च सौमदत्तिस्तथैव च अन्ये च बहवः शूराः मदर्थे त्यक्तजीविताः नानाशस्त्रप्रहरणाः सर्वे युद्धविशारदाः.
Sorry. Now we completed up to shloka 9. So now let's listen to 10 and 11.
अपर्याप्तं तदस्माकं बलं भीष्माभिरक्षितं पर्याप्तं त्विदमेतेषां बलं भीमाभिरक्षितम् अयनेषु च सर्वेषु यथा भागमवस्थिताः भीष्ममेवाभिरक्षन्तु भवन्तः सर्व एव हि.
Okay, so these are shloka 10 and 11. We are going to see the literal meaning, and then we are going to see the deeper meaning, and then we can have a discussion with Avanti also. So it tells Aparyaptam tatasmakam belam bhishmabhirakshitam. Paryaptam tijame desham belam bhimabhirakshitam. After enumerating both Kaurava and Pandava army. Remember, Duryodhana is talking to his teacher, Dronacharya, and he said, you watch the Pandava people. These are all the people who are like Bhima and Arjuna. To counter them, I have you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, and all those people. After enumerating the list of people, prominent people from both the armies, Duryodhana said, Aparyaptam tadasmakam belam bhishmabhirakshitam. Asmakam, our army, is their strength. Belam is strength. And what is the characteristics of our army? Bhishmabhirakshitam. It is protected by none other than Bhishma. It is aparyaptam. There are two meanings in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is a beautiful language. Depending upon the context, you can have multiple meaning. So Sanskrit is basically a context-sensitive language. So context sensitive language, the meaning of the verses or the shlokas needs to be interpreted based on the context. So he used the word aparyaptam. This word aparyaptam has two different meanings. One meaning of aparyaptam is it is limitless, it is vast, it is larger. And then another meaning of aparyaptam is it may not be sufficient. So the beauty of this shloka, as meaning as a Vyasa, as a poet, he shows his brilliancy in poetry with these verses. He tells, even though our army, which is vast and very, very large, it may not be sufficient to contain the Pandavas. That is the meaning. Although our forces, guarded and protected by Bhishma, they are vast, but they may not be sufficient. They seems to be insufficient to protect or to wage this war. Whereas, Paryaptam tijame tesham belam bhima pirikshitam. Whereas the Pandava army, they are Paryaptam. They are limited. They are protected by Bhima, the mighty warrior Bhima. They seems to be small in number. Seems to be limited in number, but they seems to be sufficient. That's a very interesting note. Our army seems to be large, but it seems to be insufficient. And their army seems to be small, but it seems to be sufficient. So what you should do? Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha sthanam avastita. Ayana means it is the formation of the battle. It is the strategic position where the soldiers stand and what type of array they form. What is their battle strategy? All these things are known as ayanam. So you give instructions to all the people so that they follow our strategy properly. Yathasthanam avasthita. Stay at their allocated positions and perform the duty. And there is one duty, everybody. Bhishma me pabirachantu. So ensure the protection of the Bhishma. That is the command given because Bhishma is the leader of our army. So Bhishma's protection is our supremost responsibility. This is the literal meaning of the shloka. Let's go a little bit in deep. So the first point is comparing and contrasting the forces. As I said, the Pandava force protected by Bhima seems to be limited, but they seems to be enough. Whereas our army seems to be unlimited, but may not be sufficient. So this is Duryodhana's concerns. So this shows some very important point. Even though you appears to be powerful, even though you have stronger army, if you are not in the side of dharma, you will have always concern. Right? That's a world rule. You may have all the resources in the world, but seems to be insufficient. So there is a famous Sanskrit quote. It says, Arakshitam deva rakshitam, surakshitam deva hatam vinashyanti. So the noble people, the dharmic people, even though they are arakshitam, they seems to be not protected. They are protected by deva rakshitam. Those who do not have protection from any other source, they will be protected by deva. Other people are dharmic people, even though they seems to be completely secure, they are, meaning that divine rule, if that not there, they are not protected. We have seen this in history many times. So this is what Duryodhana's concern is. And this is the divine factor also, as we said, like the belief in that divine protection. When you committed to dharma, what is going to happen? You will be protected by the divine. Your army might be small, but you will be protected by the divine. And Duryodhana highlight the strategy of protecting the Bhishma, because if Bhishma is there, he know that the battle they will win. So the strategy of the other leaders were given is to protect Bhishma. And this is the strategic direction given by Duryodhana. So let's go back to the battle within. So the adharmic forces, they are large in number, appears to be large in number, led by the pseudo-self or ego. Bhishma represents the pseudo-self because Bhishma what is pseudo self? It is my perception about myself. It is known as ahamkara in Sanskrit. The word ego came from the word Latin. First of all, the word ego is nothing negative. Please understand that. Usually we think that the ego is bad. So ego means it is the sense of I-ness. This is a function of our mind which gives me an individuality. And imagine if that individuality is there, there is no existence for me. And what is the most powerful entity in me? It is that ego or that self. And this ego has something called Swachanda Mrityu. It will die only when it will conquer, it will be defeated only when it determines. That is very well represented by the character of Bhishma in the Mahabharata war. Arjuna could not have defeated Bhishma. If Bhishma wants, he can defeat anybody. So this pseudo self, led by the dharmic forces, led by Bhishma, even though they are large, but the dharmic forces is good enough to conquer them. That is the idea. Whereas the dharmic forces, they are small in number, led by the life force control Bhima, and they are adequate to conquer this adharmic forces. This is the battle within tells us. So this battle within is to understanding that perceived self and the challenging. As I said, the ego or the perceived self, it is an individual self-perception. This self-perception of myself determines what type of thoughts comes to my mind, what type of emotions comes to my mind, and what type of actions I do. Usually what is the problem is this pseudo self, even though it is great, it is noble, and it has all intentions to protect me, take care of me, when it get attached to the body, what is going to happen? It unfortunately it stays with the adharmic forces. That is very well illustrated by the Bhishma's character. Bhishma was a noble person, but he was so much attached, so much committed to the kingdom of Hastinapura. His Shapatha was whoever sits in the throne of Hastinapura, he will see them as his dad and try to protect them. So that is why even though he knew that I'm on the side of Adharma, he has to wage that battle. So this powerful character of Bhishma in Mahabharata represents this perceived self. This interpretation is given by the great teacher Paramamsa Yogananda. And the strategy of these adharmic forces is always, because look at what Duryodhana said, Ayameshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagam avasthita Bhishma me bhavirachantu. Your strategy is to protect Bhishma, boost Bhishma, propitiate that perceived self, and keep that perceived self in the side of the body. So that is the strategy. So please try to understand this. It is pretty much about our own day-to-day life. So guarding the ego is the play of our overwhelming negative tendencies. Because when the negative tendencies are aligned with this ego, it may give us temporary success outside, temporary sense gratification. For example, a sleep versus the workout. The sleep might look good to me, but it may not lead us to the path of good. And one cannot reach enlightened when our own individual self is getting aligned with the negative forces within me. So this is the theme of this chapter, remaining verses. So let me request Avanti to add her thought on this.
Namaskar. So like I mentioned last week, we have to sit with Duryodhana's train of thought. Now, last week also we saw how he took 4 verses describing 20 warriors in the Pandava army, whereas just in one verse, he quickly enumerated 7 warriors from his own side. So generally we are seeing that Duryodhana, though, is speaking with great arrogance, there is a very overwhelming sense of fear that he's portraying, that he doesn't know that he's portraying. Because when we are fearful, what do? Unconsciously, we always magnify that fear, that enemy, or whatever is standing in front of us. So the same train of thought is following in this particular verse, in verse number 10, if you see, where arrogance and fear is coming together and just spilling out of Duryodhana without will or volition. So on one hand, he's acknowledging that the army is vast because he can look at the numbers. It's clearly different. 4 battalion difference. Like it's 11 Akshahinis to 7. So there's a 4 battalion difference, and one battalion is 10,000. So that's a huge difference. So he's saying that it's vast. So that's his arrogance saying that, yes, my army is very vast. But his fear, like a small child, like a riotous child, is saying, but it may not be sufficient. Why? Because though he sees the number of the Pandavas are less, he knows that they are on the side of dharma. See, adharma always knows that dharma is stronger. Adharma just keeps blabbering until dharma is quiet. And many times, for a long time, dharma is quiet. I remember as a child, I used to keep asking that, how is it Kansa was allowed to rule for such a long time? How is it that Ravana didn't die? One head used to be chopped off and another head used to come up. And I remember my elders, especially my grandmother, always saying, I don't know why it's planned like that. That for a long time, it seems that adharma is thriving, and the good people say, what's the point of doing good? Anyways, adharma is doing all the bad and they are thriving. So that's something that we have to pay attention to, that it only thrives until good is quiet. Good takes a little while to start speaking and to start asserting, but the minute it does, the bad is completely quietened. So false pride, even in us, will always have this underlying insecurity that we may not be aware of, but we give it away in how we behave. One more thing is that Duryodhana does not know at this point what is waiting for him. Subconsciously, of course, he's fearful. But up till now, if you go to see the Mahabharata story, from childhood to now, he's only seen the Pandavas play a very weak, passive, submissive role in this entire battle that's been going on forever. Pandava-Kaurava battle did not start on the Kurukshetra battlefield. It started when they were little children. And he's always seen, for whatever reason, himself more powerful, because the Pandavas never retaliated as vociferously as the Kauravas used to behave. Then in verse 11, he speaks about protecting Bhishma. Again, a very, very strong display of his fear. See, previously, if you remember in one of the verses, when he's boasting to Dronacharya, all the people in his army, he says one very peculiar line, which we should never forget. He says, all these people who I'm naming, all these great warriors on our side, they're all teaming up to fight for my sake. They're all here to fight for my sake. And internally, he knows nobody is there to fight for his sake. Even when we look at political parties that are forming liaisons with each other, just for the sake to have majority, but none of them are aligned. None of them are aligned mentally on the same agenda. And that is why one slight thing and they all fall apart. Now, Duryodhana's internal conscience, his conscience is making him aware that, these people are not really aligned with my adharma. And like Rajesh ji has said before, Duryodhana knows he's adharmic. Krishna and he have had a conversation. Krishna says, why are you doing wrong things? He says, I am doing wrong things. I know they are wrong things, but I can't stop doing wrong things. I know what is the right thing, but I can't get myself to do the right thing. So Duryodhana is very well aware that he's on the side of adharma. And in that, he gets a bit muffled. That maybe these battalions of mine that I have collected through adharma may not be together till the end if I don't get one integrating factor into this. And so he speaks of Bhishma. See, whatever Bhishma's portrayal is of, pseudo-ego and pseudo-self and all of that, he is very, very revered by one and all of that generation for the very fact that he gave up this kingdom, the same kingdom that these two parties are fighting for. He just gave it off. For what? For the love of his father. Now, that's a different argument whether it was right or wrong, but he gave it up. He had no interest in power, and that itself had put him on a very high pedestal. So he was a name, a formidable force to be reckoned with. And so by just taking that name, he's trying to integrate those forces. You see, if he hadn't taken Bhishma's name and he went on rattling like this, he would like make the armies very uncertain. Like the more time you give people to think, they start wondering like, wait, why am I even here? So very strategic move by Duryodhana here by taking Bhishma's name. Now, when we want to make it practical for our daily use, not just keep it as a story, if we see everything bad in us also, we kind of hide it within good. So a very angry person who's constantly angry, how many times will say, oh, I'm angry because these are my principles and these are the right principles that I have to defend. You know, a lustful person always tries to hide his or her lust under the name of love. So we always try to glorify the bad in us by cloaking it in good. And that is what's happening over here, is that Duryodhana knows that it's whatever's happening over there is adharma. But because Bhishma is portrayed as that highest, the epitome of goodness, he's trying to hide his agenda in the fact that Bhishma is present and integrating all of those forces, protect Bhishma. So they all have a common cause to stay together right till the end. Others halfway through, they would think that, oh my God, this is where are we here and why are we even here? So we have to keep relating this to how our mind functions. Like I said, for a psychology student, this chapter 1 is a treat. There is no other book, I would say, that gives such an in-depth insight into the human psyche. So keep trying to relate this. Listen to these lectures again and again. Read the book and try and make this connect. Once this connect is made, then practicality of Gita becomes very, very easy. Thank you.
That covers Shloka 10 and 11. Now let's review Shloka 12 and 13 also today. So let's listen first.
तस्य सञ्जनयन् हर्षं कुरुवृद्धः पितामहः सिंहनादं विनद्योच्चैः शङ्खं दध्मौ प्रतापवान् ततः शङ्खाश्च भैर्यश्च पणवानकगोमुखाः सहसैवाभ्यहन्यन्त सशब्दस्तु मुलोऽभवत्.
Okay, another brilliant poetical expression. So, after hearing this conversation between Dronacharya and Duryodhana, Duryodhana was talking to Dronacharya. Drona was not responding or anything like that. At that time, Bhishma hears this conversation. He knows that if the leader is not confident, meaning the battle is fought for Duryodhana, and he himself is not confident, that is going to disintegrate the whole army completely. So, Tasya Sanjanayan Harsham, to make him confident, to make him happy, Kuruvritha Pitamakaha, the great grandsire, the eldest of all, the Vritha, the word Vritha means the eldest. So the most powerful, the most revered Pitamaha, the grandsire, Bhishma, what he did, Simhanadam Vinadyoche, he blew his conch, which appears like a roar, meaning roar of a lion. So he to inspire Duryodhana. So that is what it is. Shankam Dakmau Pratapavan. He was the most glorious. He was the famous person, Bhishma. And the most respected, revered Bhishma, what he did was he blew his conch, and his conch appears to be like the roar of a lion. So hearing this conch, that is in a battle, in the ancient rules of the battle, this conch the blow of the conch starts the battle officially. That is how it is a signal. So suddenly, what happened was all the Kaurava people started blowing their conch. Then their shells, their kettle drums, and all these instruments of war. They started playing that. And the scene was very terrific. It was very loud, but there was no harmony in that. So even though it was very loud, there was no harmony. So the whole idea of these two shlokas is just to take the attention of Duryodhana away from that conversation which was not adding any value. He himself was confused. To give him confidence, the most revered person, Bhishma, he blew his conch, and his conch appears to be very powerful, like the roar of a lion. And hearing Bhishma's conch, all the people in the Kaurava army started blowing their conch, and their drums, their horns, all these instruments, which is designed to boost the confidence and the spirit of these warriors. Even in wars, modern time, we use some of these things, right? They use certain chants. Certain regiments of armies have their own chants, and there are certain rituals they follow to keep their spirit up. So that's what it is. So the whole sound reverberated the whole place, and that is the scene is the war is about to begin. That is the whole idea. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. So the first thing is this this narration is brilliant. It takes us to the what is exactly happening in the battlefield. Again, the poetic beauty of Vyasa, the skill of Vyasa. So he is talking about what is happening in that battlefield. The Sanjaya's narration gives us a very good word painting. Actually, the painting is done using different selected words, and it takes us to the battlefield. And it shows the display of Bhishma's might. It's like a lion roar signaling and the readiness and the beginning of the warfare. So there is unity among Kauravas, as Avanti said. A lot of people join together, but they are not completely aligned. So even though when they started hearing this Bhishma's conch, everybody started blowing their instruments. So even though there was big, loud noise was there was no harmony. There was no unity in that. So that is very, very interesting to note that point. So this is what it is. And another thing is that in ancient warfare, the ethics of engagement, the conch sound signifies the beginning of the conflict. Before that, they never used to fight. And Bhishma was very particular that he won't break any rules in the war. And you can see, as long as Bhishma was the commander in chief of the Kaurava forces, he didn't broke any rules. That was very interesting. But later point of time when Drona started, you can see that the rules getting broken, and then both sides started breaking the rules. So all these things happened. And then the legacy of Bhishma is highlighted by the two words. One is called Kuruvritha and the other one is Pratapavan. Bhishma's might is indicated by the word Pratapavan, and the word Kuruvritha shows his experience, his reverence, and his position in the whole dynasty. And this is mainly for introspection purpose, because the battle within also is going to happen, right? The strong push and pull from the atharmic forces like Duryodhana and habit. That time, what is going to happen? The ego or the pseudo self will act in their direction. That's another point to think. So let's think about what is happening in the battle within. Typically, the pseudo self supports the emotional pull, because even though the pseudo self knows that his pseudo self is really good, it always want our welfare and our well-being. But what happens when the triggers comes in, when the automatic thoughts comes in response to a situation, the pseudo self just go in that direction. These automatic thoughts triggers further thoughts and emotions and disturb the mind and take control of the mind. So when we act in that direction, like even a simple example, when you go for a buffet, like you see one left side is healthy, right side is healthy food, left side is fried food or the unhealthy food. So what is going to happen? You see both. There is a constant push. Okay, let me just compromise today and eat nicely. So what happens? The individual, even though it knows that, okay, I need to go in the other direction, I just carried away by the pull and push of these adharmic tendencies. So that's what is highlighted in this verse. How this happens, some automatic thoughts, these Shankha are represented by the automatic thoughts. Automatic thoughts will put some explanation, some logic in our mind, and just we go in that direction. And these influx of these thoughts create some restlessness in our mind. And then what is going to happen? We generally go in the direction of that emotional pull. So we call it as situational pressure. And these situation, most of the people cannot resist these situational pressures created by these automatic thoughts. And most of the times, we become a victim of the situation rather than a master of the situation. And this is the message of the Gita. So, what is the impact of these automatic thoughts, right? So, sometimes I get these thoughts. I am in danger. I won't be able to cope up with that. And naturally, what emotions will take over me? Anxiety and fear. I am being treated unfairly. What is going to happen? Anger will come, and I will go in the direction of that anger. Everything is hopeless. I am totally worthless. Sometimes that is the automatic thoughts tells me. Without doing the fact check, these emotions are going to overpower us. Depression. This is our own life story. If you sit and meditate upon this, think or contemplate upon this, you will see that this is the autobiography of most of us. And this thought is pretty much endorsed by the modern science, especially the neuropsychology. The neuropsychology sees this emotion as an evolution. It's a part of the human development. And this emotional spectrum is very broad according to the neuropsychology. It tells both constructive feelings as well as the destructive impulses are always there in the thing, in our mind. And what happens is this emotions, what exactly the automatic thoughts comes to our mind, it is based upon that survival instinct which is programmed in our brain. So what is going to happen is the probability of that survival triggers is not pretty much mandatory or required in the modern world. A simple example, right? Our brain is designed to identify some threats outside, and if there is a threat, definitely we wanted to act on that. That is how the brain designed the solution. So, for example, in ancient times, when a person lives in a jungle, there were a lot of threats. There could be a tiger, there could be a fire, or there could be other life threatening situations. In that life threatening situation, how should we respond? It is already programmed in the brain. So I think most of you know the science. Whenever we get a sensory input, that sensory input is sent to two parts of our brain simultaneously. One is called our prefrontal cortex and the other one is called amygdala. Amygdala is known as our emotional center or emotional brain. The other one is called as your thinking brain. So both these centers of the brain will process this information simultaneously. When the and typically what happens, the prefrontal cortex, which is your thinking brain, it uses a computing method to process the sensory input. And whereas the amygdala, which is your emotional brain, uses a pattern recognition for matching. And when a pattern matching happens, what is going to happen? The amygdala is going to take control of your entire brain and it will suspend the thinking brain completely. Because, see, let's say that there is a fire. There is not much time for you to think or act, and you just need to respond. And this natural reflex, it comes from that emotional hijack. This is the technical term called in the neuropsychology called emotional hijack. And this, once the emotional hijack happens based upon a pattern recognition, it is going to hijack you and you will just carry it away. And this is needed. This is needed for human being when real threat happens. But in the modern world, most of the threats are false alarms. And when this false alarms happens, you just respond. And that is why, like, no financial problem demands an emotional hijack, but that is how we respond. No conversation between two people need not go to an emotional hijack, but it goes. This will take a lot of time for the nature to fix it in our brain, because the last 10,000 years of the human history, we progressed a lot, and it will take another million years for the brain to change automatically like that. So this is what the root cause per the modern psychology. And there is a beautiful book called Destructive Emotions by Daniel Goleman. This book talks about this, the nature of these positive emotions and the negative emotions and their battle. And if you read this book, you will see that it is exactly like the chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. So neuropsychology always emphasize this point. We just wanted to give a quick idea of that. And this automatic thoughts, like when it comes to my mind, they convince me just like the real world sensory input. Just like I see something, these automatic thoughts, okay, I am helpless, I need to react. I am anxious, I need to react. So this anxiety, this worry, this depression, it just comes as though it is so real. I feel that helplessness. I'm reacting to what I'm seeing. Whether it is true or not, I'm not, it doesn't matter. If I see a depressing situation in my mind, more than the reality, I'm responding to that depressive situation. This is brilliantly expressed by the snake and rope example of the Vedanta. So if I see in a uh, dark night, if I see a snake lying down on the street, I can mistake that, meaning it was a rope. If I mistake that rope as a snake, my emotions, my response, my thoughts, everything is driven as if it is a snake. This is known as the Pradipasika Satyam in Vedanta. More than what exists, I see that it exists. It doesn't matter whether it is true or false. I'm going to respond to what I see, more than what it is there. So there are two types of truth in Vedanta. One is called Vyavaharika Satyam, relative reality or the empirical reality, and the other one is called Pradibhasika Satyam, which is the illusionary reality. So let's say that if I see the snake, if I see the rope as rope, it is relative reality or the empirical reality. So the definition of it is it exists, therefore I see it. Listen carefully. It exists, therefore I see it. So the rope exists, therefore I see it. Whereas what happens when I see the rope as a snake, I see it, therefore it exists. That is the difference between these truths. So the automatic thoughts, when a stressful situation comes, they convince me that it is real. It convinces me the snake is real. So I need to respond. And what happens? They emerge suddenly in the mind, often going undetected, and it will tell that what is happening is reality. And typically they exaggerate the risk. Typically the adverse outcome it will predict. A small migraine, it will predict as a brain tumor, and it will forecast disasters. And what is going to happen? It is going to create a cascade of negative thoughts, and they are going to take control of my mind. This is expressed in psychology many times, and that is exactly what is highlighted in the Gita through these verses. So, two scenarios. I'm going to take two practical scenarios and seeing how the automatic thoughts play a role. The first scenario, the impact of negative forces. A rumor is spreading in the workplace about a potential reorg. What is going to happen? Irritated. I become completely irritated. The automatic thoughts puts me something, and I feel helpless, and I don't have lack of clarity. I get frustrated. I get angry. I become extreme fearful. I have high anxiety, and I cannot focus on the work or the next steps. Because of this negative thoughts or this automatic thoughts, I'm not able to get ready for a difficult situation because there is no clarity. I'm not able to enjoy life, and I lose the relationship with family and friends because of my own response. The third one is what happened. This is going to destroy my physical and mental health. And fourth one, right? I don't know what is to be done. I'm not able to respond to the situation properly. This is a classic example. How the negative forces or the adharmic thoughts or the asuric thoughts affects me. The same scenario. If I do have control over the mind, how do I do? Let's see. What is going to happen? Again, the same rumor is spreading, right? A potential layoff in the organization. What happens? I have self-control is dominating, the clarity is dominating. These are the Pandava forces dominating. The focus is dominating, the faith is dominating, the calmness is dominating, the life force control is dominating. If Kauravas are dominating, what happens? I am not able to think clearly. I get frustrated. I'm not able to relate with people. I'm not able to enjoy the life. And most importantly, I'm not able to handle the situation. But if Pandavas are in control, see this as an alert and evaluate the options in front of me. I may update my LinkedIn profile. I may update my resume. I may see what type of jobs are good for me. I try to prepare for that and prepare for the worst and expect the best. That is what we will do. And then what is going to happen? Take this as an opportunity. Probably meaning I have seen several situations when something like this happens. People can take this as an opportunity and even grow in their career. So such people live a stress-free life. Such people enjoy the daily life. And such people live their life. Otherwise, every day they live, but they are dying. This is what the importance of this verse is. I'm trying to make it very much connect with our life, with a real world situation. That is why it is. And I just wanted to get a few quotes from some of the renowned masters regarding this particular topic. So Krishna himself tells, hypocrisy, arrogance, pride, anger, all these things are the marks of with demonic qualities. In the 16th chapter, brilliantly explains this. And when these characters dominates, when these tendencies dominates, I'm going to fail in my life. And there is no point in cursing God or crying to anybody and blaming XYZ. It is I myself made it. Vivekananda tells, we must get beyond the emotionalism. Emotions are good, but if we are controlled 100% by the emotions, it belongs to animals. They are creatures of the emotions entirely. Look at the emotion. Emotion is only a cue or an input, and we cannot carry it away by that because it just gives me an alert. I need to take this as an input and I need to process it and do it the right thing. That's all we need to do. And Paramahamsa Yogananda tells, material desires, wishes the past habits, which is represented by Drona, material desires represented by Duryodhana, which has sided by the prevailing evil sense and inclination, all the Kauravas, and they will be to be in possession of the full facts. If they control, it is going to destroy me. And his book, God Talks to Arjuna, gives a lot of information. His Holiness Dalai Lama, commenting on Daniel Goldman book, Destructive Emotion, he tells, whether you are a national leader or a beggar on the street, destructive emotions disturb your peace of mind. This is very true. And Daniel Goldman makes a beautiful statement. If you are not able to manage your distressing emotions, you don't have the empathy and you cannot create an effective relationship. And no matter how smart you are not going to get very far. So this particular battle within is very important for in everybody's life.
So a few points worth reiterating at this stage. Again, Duryodhana has had a free rein on his verbal diarrhea, I would say, on the battlefield. Unnecessary speaking for no rhyme or reason, talking nonsense, just trying to cover up his own insecurities and fear in the mask of arrogance and overconfidence. What is to be marked, which is also a quality that Krishna portrays later on, is Dronacharya's silence. Dronacharya is his teacher. In the position of his teacher, he has every right to say, ask Duryodhana to shut up and get on with the agenda at hand. But he keeps quiet. He allows Duryodhana to keep venting whatever he needs to vent. A very big lesson for us, which is reiterated by Krishna, not to keep jumping in when somebody is just, ranting off, Now, there are two different advices for when Arjuna starts and when Duryodhana right now is speaking. But as far as Duryodhana is concerned, it's like when somebody is talking a whole lot of nonsense. I think parents experience this a lot with their children and grandchildren, where they're really upset and they're just talking any nonsense, especially teenagers of today. Just talking things that make no sense, absolutely. And in that, we are trying to interfere and make sense, put sense into their brain or make them see sense in something. It's futile. Two things are happening in this. We use this a lot in parenting workshops, these particular verses. Two things are happening. First of all, you're wasting your breath. You're wasting your energy. It's water on a duck's back. That's number one. Number two, you are distancing yourself even more from your children or whoever it is that is trying to vent to you and you're trying to put sense into them, because they just need a sounding board. And you trying to say something tells them, look, you are not worthy of being heard. So keep quiet and listen to me. So that distances and that really strains relationships, at least, especially between parents and children. So we have to be aware of that. Silence. Silence is the key when somebody is going on with a lot of nonsense. That's one thing. Now, Bhishma, blowing the conch was, like Rajesh ji said, to first of all quieten and inspire Duryodhana. He's clearly losing his stability and going all over the place. And if he was left to carry on like that, he himself would have crumbled on the battlefield, let alone his armies. So because Bhishma blew the conch to try and rally the armies in and inspire Duryodhana, it is said, and many times people raise this question in various classes. So is it true that Bhishma is the one who was the most eager for this war? And was it him who initiated the actual war on the battlefield? So yes, because he was the one who blew the first conch, which, like Rajesh ji said, heralds war. And no, because actually he had a different intention, which was very clear from the conversation and the way the whole narration of Sanjaya flowed, that he was just trying to inspire Duryodhana and rally in all the forces. Now, this is another, to make it practical again, we should not leave it as a story. When we get into this whole thing of overthinking, that's what Duryodhana is doing here, right? And that's what Arjuna also does later on, is that one thought comes into our mind, and with that, so many thoughts emerge just from that one thought. And then there's that whole confusion in our brain. So what does Bhishma picking up that conch and blowing it signify or tell us to do? When such overthinking kicks in, most psychotherapists and psychologists, their first advice is get up and do something. When you're sitting down and just thinking, you could get into such a riot state within your head that you become completely incapacitated. And that would have been Duryodhana's condition, as it was Arjuna's later on. So that blowing of the conch, get up, move your body, move your limbs, start doing something in the house. The famous advice is go out for a walk, just get physical so that you kind of nip that overthinking in the bud. You don't let it carry on. One more nice statement to focus on is that when Bhishma blew his conch, all the other Kauravas blew their conches. And there's this one statement in that verse, very innocuous, but very meaningful. The noise was tumultuous. It was very loud and not harmonious. Now, why is this important? It's important to understand because we mentioned it in the past verse, but we will reiterate it again with a different angle to it, is that none of those armies were aligned with one particular agenda. If you go in to sit with the analysis of why those armies had joined, some were out of fear, some were out of the favors they had taken, some were because they were bullied into it, some were because they thought that would be the more powerful army because Bhishma was there. Nobody even knew the reason why they were there, and nobody had the same, like all the parties did not have the same agenda. So when the agenda is not one, there is a lot of chaos. Now, when you look at this, let's go even within our families. Parenting again, we bring this up in the parenting workshop. as well, where we say that when father and mother don't have the same agenda on raising the child, there's chaos. We can't raise the child. So when we say we should be on the same page, we should be on the same page. When generally the family, of course, each one has our own personal soul agendas that we've come into this life with. But when we are in a unit, be it in a family, in a society, in a community, in a nation, in the world, generally we should have an agenda that is kind of common in what? That is aligned to dharma, that is aligned to the highest and best good for everybody present in that particular uh, unit, which is clearly missing in this thing. So we will see whenever there is chaos in our lives, come back to the agenda. That common agenda is missing. And that common agenda is missing, not only that it's not the same, it can never be the same because we're all different people, but it is not aligned for the highest and greatest good of all, which in this case will be defined as dharma. Okay. Mahatma Gandhi has this beautiful quote. Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. So now coming from the family, community, nation, all those units, coming to yourself, when within yourself you don't have one agenda. When your mind is thinking of one thing, you're saying completely something else, you're doing the third thing, you're feeling the fourth thing. That's where, believe it or not, that's how disease starts in the body. Dis-ease, which also culminates as disease. So that importance of there being an agenda, whether it is within our own self or whether it is in our community, is most important. And that is what we see lacking in the Kaurava forces. And that is what we will consistently see lacking in our lives within our own self or in the greater collective. So that we should be very, very mindful of. Now, automatic thoughts that Rajeshji put a lot of time into and effort into, brilliant slides, putting them together. We have to understand that when we get, same thing, what was happening to Duryodhana, when we get into that overthinking, we'll see it in Arjuna's downfall as well, mental downfall as well. One thought, the way it breeds imagination and makes everything that is not real. He gave a brilliant example. You get a headache and you type in Google, I have a headache, and the first thought that comes to you, oh my God, it might be a brain tumor. So it's human folly or human frailty that it imagines the worst of any scenario. There's this wonderful quote of Mark Twain which reiterates this fact, and he goes, I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. And if you go to see in our lives also, go back to the furthest childhood memory that you can go to, you will be amazed to see how many things you worried about in that moment. How many things you thought was the end of the world, your world. And those things never even came to be. And even if it came to be, you got through it. So what should be our strategy over here? Bhishma blowing the conch, right? He got our mind to the present moment. When we worry, we are suffering twice. First of all, in our imagination, because we are suffering thinking of what is going to happen. And God forbid that thing actually happens, we are going to suffer again. So why are we putting ourselves to suffering twice? We may as well suffer once when we come to it. We may as well arrive at that point of suffering and suffer then with all our energy intact. We've dissipated most of our energy in the worry that precedes actual suffering, which may or may not happen. So that's another thing that we really, really need to pay attention to. Now I'm going to go a little bit on the bhakti side. I won't say bhakti is belief in God at this point, but belief in good. Belief in good of what? Good of yourself. When we have been generally good human beings, we are doing the best of what we can, to the best of our ability, with whatever we know, whatever we have, with whatever knowledge we have. We are generally good. So believe in that good. Believe in the benevolence of the universe, that it supports good. And of course, belief in God, if you do believe in God at this stage. There's this lovely book, which the title of the book is, When You Worry, Why Are You Bothering to Pray? And when you pray, why are you worrying? So think about this over and over and over again. That if, for the most part, you are generally aligned with the best that you know of dharma and are going. Of course, we will fall short because we don't know it all. But if we are going and living according to dharma, then, and we believe fully in that dharma that we are following, and added bonus is a belief in God, there is no need to worry. These automatic thoughts should not take over, no matter what. And if we are deciding to worry, no, then let's stop faking that we are believing, because we are wasting our own time. And at the end of the day, we have to be honest with ourselves only and nobody else. And one more thing he spoke about was he gave so many quotes, Rajeshji, on various destructive emotions and why they are so harmful to us. Now, see, you have to understand that emotions, when you translate that word, it means they are primary movers. Anything good or bad that we have done in our life, if you look at it intently, there has been a very strong emotion behind it. To do our best bad and to do our best good, we need this force called emotion. Like I said, it's a primary mover. But the whole power of emotion lies in our ability to be able to control it and use the emotion, not be used by the emotion. That is why we are put on the highest pedestal of creation. Why? Because minerals and plants don't have any emotions. Okay, now you might argue that, oh, plants, when you talk to them, they grow. But generally, they don't have the kind of emotions that we call emotions. So we are not plants. We have emotions. We are not animals. I have a little dog at home that if I'm away for 1 hour and the minute I come back, it goes crazy, no control over the emotion. It's like jumping all over me. She's licking me. She's going completely berserk. Imagine if you do that. Your husband comes home in the evening and you start acting like a dog. It's we can't do that. So we are not animals that have no control over our emotions. We are not plants or mineral kingdom that have no emotions. We are human beings who are proud to have emotions and are able to use them as our primary movers to do amazing things. Definitely, we need to hold in our destructive emotions so that we don't do the bad things with great flair. But for the good things in life, we need the good emotions. Great love, great dedication, great passion. But we use it. We pull it out of our hats or out of our pocket when we need to use it. So that's another thing I just wanted to highlight. Thank you.